Charizard EX, released in the Scarlet and Violet Obsidian Flames expansion of the Pokémon TCG. Since it's released, it's day 2'd, topped, won multiple big events, but with the new Pokémon TCG rotation happening just 3 weeks ago, Charizard has become a new high-level threat within the meta, and you need to be prepared for it, or you need to know how to play it. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the TCG Empire YouTube channel. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to stray away from the Pokemon Trading Card Game live videos just for today. And instead, I really want to take a look at Charizard EX as a deck. Now, I know that last week we did cover Charizard EX as Tord did win with it at EUIC. But this past weekend at Perth Regionals as well as Orlando Regionals, Charizard won again. And I feel like a lot of new players coming into the game might see that and want to pick up Charizard as a deck, and I want to be able to provide the content that can help you guys with that. So if you're new, today's video is something catered towards you. If you're a returning player to the channel, I want to thank you for all of the love and support like I always do, and watch this. I worked really hard on it, but you might find something neat in it. You might find some ideas for some tech cards within Charizard. But that's enough rambling for that. Let's talk about what's going to be in the video today. So there's going to be 5 levels to this video. The first part of the video is going to be analyzing the Pokemon in Charizard as a whole, talking about the support aspects, talking about what they do, main attackers, all that fun stuff. And then level 2, we're going to be talking about the items and the tools. These are going to be the things that really help the deck thrive. And then level 3, we're going to talk about supporters. What supporters should you be playing inside of Charizard? And then level 4, stadiums. These are the cards that are going to really make or break your board depending on how you play them. And then level 5 will be the energy. This will be catered towards the energy counts and what we want to do within the deck. And then at the end, we're going to show an initial skeleton as to the cards that you should be playing the most copies of and the copies that everybody plays in their list. No ifs, ands, or buts. These are found in every single Charizard list. Give or take 1 or 2 cards, but we'll get to that. So, enjoy the video today, guys. I really appreciate everything that you guys have done. We're going to get right to the chalkboard, and I'll see you guys at the end of the video. Getting into the very first Pokemon within the Pokemon list is the Charmander with 60 HP from Obsidian Flames. It does have the Heat Tackle attack, and this Pokemon also does 10 damage to itself. With Heat Tackle, you are able to trade more efficiently into something like Roaring Moon. It means that if they use Frenzy Gouging and damage themselves, you are able to respond with a 1-prizer to which you can change up the prize trade and make it more efficient for you. Now, Charmander also does have the ability to damage itself, which is very strong against something like Blocklax. It means that you are able to get yourself out of a lock, but also you are able to put yourself in a position where if they only have a charm attached to Snorlax, you are able to take a KO because they technically can take 1 prize off of you KOing yourself with Charmander. The next Pokemon we're going to take a look at is the Charmeleon from Paldean Fates with the Flare Veil. Prevent all effects of attacks used by your opponent's Pokemon done to this Pokemon. So this means that this Charmeleon is not affected by things like Sableye or TM Devolution, which means that you don't have to worry about the bench protection in certain matchups against things like Lost Box or against things like Charizard Mirrors that may be playing TM Devo. You don't have to worry about the Charmeleon being devolved. It means that you are safe to keep it in play. Next, we're going to talk about the main attacker of the deck, Charizard EX. Now, Charizard EX does have the ability to accelerate energy into play, as well as punish your opponent for taking prizes. With having a maximum damage output of 330 damage, it can knock out any relevant Pokemon in the format, regardless of their HP, providing they don't have any HP modifiers. This includes the 310 range, the 230 range, as well as even the 280 range. Next is the Pidgey from the 151 set. and it gives you the ability to set up your board if you have a bad opening and can grab any basic. This includes a Charmander, Rotom, Pidgey, or anything else your deck might need to set up. Now, we're going to talk about Pidgeot EX. Now, Pidgeot EX has the ability to grab any card from your deck once per turn. This allows for you to keep momentum and control of the game. If you need to search your deck for a supporter in the late game or early game, you're more than happy to do that. If you need to grab any item cards, such as your A-Spec in the deck or a way to just evolve into a Charizard, you're more than happy to do that. And if you just need to find a missing piece like a Charizard or an energy to attack for the game, you can definitely do that. With Pidgeot, you are able to solidify your board and make sure that you are prepared for everything. Now we're going to take a look at Rotom V. This Pokemon is going to just mainly sit on your bench and act as extra draw support in the beginning turns of the game that you are playing. With its instant charge ability, allowing you to draw 3 cards, it helps to establish a turn 2 Pidgeot or Zard easier, and can even help you to recover in the late game depending on what you have access to in the deck and if you can afford to use it. Then we have the other V Pokemon that we're going to be playing in the deck. This is going to be Lumineon V. When you play Lumineon V down, it allows for you to search for any supporter in your deck, which means that you have the chance to establish a better turn 2 or find a way to disrupt your opponent if you are in the late game and feel like it's necessary to gain an advantage in the matchup. Next, we have the Manaphy. Now, Manaphy is going to sit and be your bench barrier Pokemon to protect from unwanted damage that may be spread to your bench via other Pokemon's attacks. Finally, we're going to take a look at Radiant Charizard. Now, Radiant Charizard is a great single prize attacker that can trade prizes efficiently against your opponent's 2-prize Pokemon. If a Charizard EX was just knocked out, you can swing with the Radiant Charizard, leaving your board with only 1 prizers, and thus your opponent has to play around that, and it's very easy to recover and use again in the late game. Finally, we're coming down to the tech cards that can be played within Charizard EX. Now, these cards are classified as tech, simply put, because they don't appear in every single Charizard EX list. These are more of cards that can be put into the deck depending on what you expect for the meta. The first card that we're going to talk about is the Bibarel. This is the one that does allow you to draw until you have 5 cards in hand. It's a very strong card in the late game as it helps you to recover better from supporters like Iono or Roxanne, and if your Pidgeot is ever KO'd, you still have the backup draw support that doesn't require a rare candy. And then next, we're going to talk about the Charmeleon from Obsidian Flames. This is the one with 90 HP. It has Heat Tackle, 70 damage, and it does 20 damage to itself. This card is very strong against control as it does allow you to KO Mimikyus because they have 70 HP, meaning if they don't have a charm or anything else to buff their HP, it gives you the chance to take out a 1-prizer. Next, we have the Charmeleon from 151. Now, the only reason that you will play this is if you are in a meta or a area that has a lot of Radiant Greninja. Having the 100 HP threshold means that if you're ever in a game where Manaphy is prized, you still are out of range from being KO'd by Greninja. Then we have the Cleffa. Now, Cleffa is huge as it does act as a way to keep building your hand, similar to the ways Rotom does. Now, with Rotom, it is a 2-prizer that sits on your bench and allows you to draw 3 cards, but with Cleffa, it has free retreat. It's a good pivot, as the free retreat offers ways for you to promote freely, similar to Pidgeot with its free retreat, and its attack costs no energy to use, and with its attack you can draw until you have 7 cards, which means that it gives you a chance in the early game to potentially burn some cards out of your hand, and then further your chances of establishing a better turn 2. It's a very good turn 1 card to use if you are going second, if you don't have access to something like Rotom, or you don't want to put a 2-prizer in play. And then finally, we have the Jirachi. Now, Jirachi is very strong against things like Lost Box. With its ability, it prevents your opponent's effects of attacks that place damage counters on your bench Pokemon, meaning that Sableye can't do anything, and it's pretty much the Charmeleon that we have in the list's ability, but it's amplified to all of your Pokemon, meaning that Pokemon that spread damage counters do not take effect. I want to take a second to help some of the newer players here who may not know the difference between damage and damage counters. For example, a Pokemon that deals damage to the bench is something like Greninja, as in its attack it says deal 90 damage to 2 of your opponent's Pokemon. This means that something like Manaphy will stop it, but Jirachi will not. Now, if we take a look at something like Sableye, Sableye says that if you have 10 cards in the lot zone, you can place 12 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon in any way you like. This is not damage, it's damage counters, which means that Manaphy will not protect against it, but something like Jirachi will. Now, onto the items. We have Rare Candy, the most important part of the deck. It's what allows the deck to function, getting cards like Charizard EX and Pidgeot EX out to establish a dominant board. Buddy Buddy Poffin, this is the best card to open with. You want to see it at all times, preferably 2, and it is searchable off of Arvin. Having 2 gives you the chance to set up Charmander Pidgey Charmander, Pidgey Pidgey Charmander, and even Manaphy Pidgey Charmander. With Ultra Ball, it allows you to not only search your deck for any Pokemon, it also gives you the chance to thin your hand of dead cards you don't need, which means that later on in the game, Iono and Roxanne is less effective on your opponent because you have less bad cards you can draw. Super Rod allows for you to place cards back into your deck, such as recovering attackers and also resources you might have to discard early on, such as Charizard, Radiant Charizard, or even the Fire Energy to accelerate from Charizard EX. Now we're going to talk about the remaining items in the list. Now these items are in a lot of the Charizard EX decks, but they vary for counts, so we're going to go over all of them and then you guys can make the choice on how many you want to play. First card, Prime Catcher. It allows you to switch your opponent's active with one of their benched and then you switch as well. This means that you can bring up something as an effect like Boss's Orders and take an easy KO, but it doesn't count as your supporter for the turn. It's very strong, and as an ace spec, it definitely is seeing play and worth running. We also have Counter Catcher. Counter Catcher allows for you to do the same thing. You can boss something up and bring it to the active, which gives you the access to take an easy knockout on something, providing that you are behind on prizes. And then we have Lost Vacuum. Lost Vacuum is huge at being able to get rid of tools and stadiums. If your opponent plays Collapse Stadium, you can't play your own, which means that you need to find a way to access that 5th bench slot, which means Lost Vacuum allows you to do that. It also gives you the ability to remove unwanted tools once you are ahead in the prize race, which then in turn works out for you to be able to progress the game without being hindered for playing certain cards down in the early game when you needed them. Finally, we have Nest Ball. Now, Nest Ball is great at being able to set up your bench and progress your board state. What it does is it allows you to search for any basic Pokemon, so providing that you have some Poffins and a Nest Ball, it means that you can fill up your board and also get a Rotom out in order to draw 3 cards, gain hand size, and then further your chances of hitting that turn 2 Charizard or turn 2 Pidgeot. Onto the tools, we have Forest Seal Stone. This allows you to search your deck for any one card. It's a pseudo Pidgeot once per game, and this can help you to search out things like Pidgeot, Buddy Buddy Poffin, or Rare Candy to establish a better board. Finally, we're on to some of the more common tools that are played, but again, the counts can be different. The first tool that we have is Maximum Belt. This does count as your ace spec, so if you choose to run this, you can't run Prime Catcher. But Maximum Belt is good to help you deal additional damage, especially against decks like Chien Pao, or certain decks like Iron Hands. If they don't hit you or take a knockout, you can still retaliate and hit 230, which does take a knockout and help ease the prize trade. Then we also have Defiance Band. Defiance Band is huge, as if your opponent does take a knockout, it helps you amplify your damage even more by adding 30 extra damage. And then we have Choice Belt, which is a full-time effect of plus 30 damage to your opponent's V Pokemon. Now, Vs aren't as common anymore, but in case you do run into them, Choice Belt is still huge, and Choice Belt also does help to ensure that if your opponent has taken no prize cards, you can KO something like a Rotom V in the mirror match. Going into supporters, the first one we have is Arvin. This allows for you to search for an item card and a tool card. It's insanely useful at helping you to get a turn 2 Charizard or turn 2 Pidgeot off, as you can search for the Forest Seal Stone and also a rare candy. And it also gives you a useful end game scenario where if you are behind on prizes, you can actually search for Counter Catcher, plus having access to Defiance Band, which gives you extra damage output as well as being able to KO something you want by bringing it up from the bench. Iono, the best way to disrupt your opponent, as it doesn't allow them to keep large hand sizes, and it also allows for you to put dead cards that you may not need anymore to the bottom of your deck so you won't draw into them until later in the game. Boss's Orders, this is just how you're going to pick apart your opponent's bench and take your prize cards in order to win the game. Professor Turo's scenario is great at allowing you to often deny your opponent a win condition. It allows you to take 2 prizers off of the board that may have damage or that you don't want, such as things like Charizard EX, Lumineon, or even Rotom. It's a great way at ensuring that your opponent can't take their last 2 prizes and win the game from there. Instead, they have to go into a single prize game. Now we're going to talk about the extra supporters that you have the option to play when it comes to building Charizard EX. These 2 include Team Yell's Cheer to start. Now, Team Yell's Cheer gives you access to shuffling back Pokemon as well as supporters, meaning against something like Control or Stall, it gives you extra options to being able to use Professor's Turo as well as shuffle it back. And then you also gain the ability to shuffle back Pokemon, which means similar to Super Rod, you have ways to get back potential alternative attackers such as Radiant Charizard. Now, we're also going to talk about Roxanne. Roxanne is huge at disrupting your opponent. Much like Iono, it allows for you to disrupt your opponent, but only at a certain point in the game. If your opponent takes 1 prize card and then takes 2 more and are at 3, Roxanne is now live, which means that you can have your opponent shuffle their hand into their deck and draw 2 cards, and you get to shuffle and draw 6. It's a great card at being able to benefit from a low hand size to going to a bigger one, and it punishes your opponent for holding a ton of cards in their hand. It means that you put them down to less cards, and from there you can make the plays to win the game. Getting into the stadiums, we have Collapse Stadium. This is essential for helping you to clear your board of unwanted Pokemon, and it also establishes a bench lock on your opponent. With being able to use this, it allows for you to discard 2 prizers in play that you really don't need anymore, meaning that you can get rid of a 2 prizer that your opponent can knock out, such as Lumineon or Rotom V. The final stadiums that we are going to talk about are the following. Lost City. It gives you the chance to Lost Zone your opponent's Pokemon, which means that they don't have the chance to bring them back. This means that you can get rid of things like Iron Hands EX and put them into the Lost Zone, or you can Lost Zone your opponent's Baxcalibur so that way they can't set up anymore. And then we also have access to Artisan. Artisan is great if you don't open a Nest Ball, Ultra Ball, or Buddy Buddy Puffin. It still gives you the chance to be able to search for a basic Pokemon without a rule box and put it into play, meaning that you still have a chance to get into the game, and it's just extra search consistency to set up your board. Finally, we're going to talk about energy. As you guys know, Charizard requires fire energy, so we're going to be playing 6. That is the most optimal amount that you should be playing in your deck. You could get away with 7, but 6 is the safest. Finally, we're on to the final 48 card skeleton. This is the 48 cards that are found in pretty much every single Charizard list that has done well at a tournament. These 48 cards are the same in every list, give or take a couple, so it's between 46 and 48, but you will find these cards in every Charizard list, which means that overall, you should be including these into your deck. If we run 46, that gives us 14 slots to work with, meaning that we can put extra cards in of something that we may want. When it comes to 48, that gives us 12 slots to where we can pretty much fit anything that we need to, whether it be Nest Ball, Counter Catcher. Again, this doesn't include Ace Specs. This also doesn't include things like Counter Catcher. It also doesn't incorporate things like potentially playing extra supporters or stadiums. These are just the fine lines for the skeletons of how to build Charizard. Alrighty guys, I hope that all of that was informative for you guys as new players. I am back on PTCG Live. I figured I would throw a quick gameplay in just so that way, you know, the newer people who are seeing Charizard for the first time or want to, you know, see hands-on things can actually experience it. And for the returning viewers who support the channel always, it's just another gameplay for you guys where I talk through everything, make some small misplays, and talk about them in the end. So again, thank you for all the love and support. If you guys did enjoy that portion of the video, do me a favor, smash the like button, subscribe, turn on post notifications. Otherwise, enjoy the gameplay, and I'll catch you guys tomorrow. Later. Alrighty guys, so let's get into playing with Charizard. Again, like I said in the little snippet there, I know that I wasn't going to showcase gameplays for this video, but I figured throwing it at the end would help people who want to actually see what I talked about actually, you know, be put into place. Now, my opponent did have us go first, so I'm not sure what they're playing. But looking at this hand's not bad. It's not the greatest. We do have access to Poffin. We just don't have a supporter to burn. But as I mentioned, we do have double Poffin, which will help us to set up our board. So we're playing against Guardy. This is going to be a little bit awkward, but it's not going to be horrible. So we'll get the board set up. If I had a retreat pivot into Cleffa, that would be huge, but sadly we don't. Manaphy in the active is not the greatest either. So what I think I'm going to do here is just grab Pidgey and Cleffa. My opponent potentially could go for something turn 2, and if they do... Oh wait, correction, I do have the ability to draw. Always pay attention to what's in your hand. So we do have the retreat going into Cleffa, so this is actually huge. I don't mind actually getting the Buddy Poffin now and just thinning an extra card. And we'll grab a Charmander just in case my opponent ends up bossing it up and KOing it at some point. And we can't attack this turn, but as I did mention, we do have the ability to use Grasping Draw next turn, which will allow us to draw until we have 7 in hand, which is huge. It's going to add consistency, and we're not putting 2 prizers on the board just yet, so that's important. And then we also have access to attacking with Charmeleon if we want to, which means that we can efficiently trade 1 prizes for 1. And then once my opponent gets EXs out, then we can start taking 2 prizes. But this is probably one of the best matches to showcase just because Gardevoir is a deck that's not under the radar anymore, but it definitely wasn't anticipated. So now we're going to be able to showcase as much of the setup as we want. We also have access to Bibarel potentially, so there is the Arven. My opponent going to be able to evolve both of these Ralts into Kirlias. If you guys do want to check out the Gardevoir video that we did 2 weeks ago, it's a very good deck. It's a very strong deck. The list could make some tweaks to it, but for now, I think it's fine. So there is the Ultra Ball. And the Earthen Vessel grabbing 2 Psychic, so there is a Psychic, and my opponent's going to just go for the Evolution, which is fine. It's inherently not the greatest because our hand isn't good, but we do have the ability to attack with Cleffa, which is huge. And all we really need is a Pidgeot, and we'll be able to get things going. The only small issue that I have with this hand is that if I do top deck Arven, technically I can't get a turn 2 Charizard, which is unfortunate, but it's not horrible. We do have access to Iono. My opponent's at 3 in hand. So I think what I'm going to do here is go for the Grasping Draw. What it will let me do is allow my opponent to take a prize card, makes Iono more effective, also turns on Counter Catcher. And Iona really isn't too important right now, and we do gain access to Arven as well if we wanted to do that. So technically we could go for an Arven play. We could Arven for something like Nest Ball plus Stone, Nest Ball for Rotom, use the Stone, Rare Candy into Charizard. But then that just kind of wastes the Stone because we could just Arven anyways, so there's no point in that. So there's Buddy Catch, so we'll see what my opponent goes for. They just grab Arven, so if my opponent just goes for the EX here, I'm not opposed to just taking a knockout on the EX and taking 2 prizes, because that's going to be the most efficient route that I can go for. Granted, my opponent can go and be super annoying with their own counter catchers. We'll have to play this out. Considering the fact that my opponent is still setting up their board, I don't think that they're gonna be attacking this turn, and if they do, that's fine. We have ways that we can deal with it, but considering the fact that they went for Arven, I think they're just gonna go for the evolution. We could actually take out this Gallade too. I'm just trying to think of the best way to go about this. We'll find out. My opponent going to be able to KO Cleffa, which is annoying, but it's not inevitable. So let's see. My opponent turned on counter catcher for us. So let's see. We'll go into the Charmander. We get Choice Belt. Choice Belt's not going to do too much right now. What I need to do is establish a Zard, but I also kind of want to be able to KO the Gardevoir, but I think getting Zard is better because it's going to force my opponent to get so many resources, plus Cape, plus anything else. They do have access to Buddy Catch, but I don't think it's going to be quite enough for them, so we're going to go for the Arven. We'll grab their rare candy, and then we can grab the Force Seal Stone, just so that way we do have it. It's a shame that this doesn't have 10 more damage on it, because I could have just heat tackled and taken a knockout that way. Let's see. Is there anything else that I could do? Technically, I could Charmeleon, but I don't think it's super doable. Yeah, we're going to have to go the Zard route, which is fine. Zard puts pressure on my opponent to find enough resources, so it's not terrible. We'll get 2 fire attached to Zard, so we need to keep an eye on what's prized. So 2, 3, 4, so we have 2 fire prized. That's a bit unfortunate, but not horrible. And then we're just going to go for the Burning Darkness. This is going to force my opponent to take a lot of resources in order to get the KO on this Zard. And now we have access to Ultra Ball, which is great depending on what my opponent goes into. We could go into a 1-prizer with Charmeleon. But only having access to 4 fire energy is tough. That's why we do play Super Rod for situations like this. So there's the Radiant Greninja draw. Let's see, if I Ultra Ball for Lumineon, if my opponent doesn't get another Kirlia into play, I'm gonna KO this Gardevoir. Actually, KOing Gardevoir is not correct. I need to force my opponent to go to 3 first, that way I can Roxanne them first. So I need to go to 4. And then if they don't take a knockout on this Zard, then I can go to 2 off of this Guardy. Then go from there. So I think next turn will just be an Ultra Ball for Bib. So there's 4 energy. So if my opponent touches 4, that'd be 80 damage, which would be 240. So they still have to get a lot in order to KO me. My opponent needs 12 damage counters on him, which is 6 energy. So, and we have the Vacuum too, which will give us a 2-price turn. So I think actually going 4 and then grabbing the Guardy EX, I'm okay with doing that. So there's the 6. Hero's Cape. That's fine. We also burn my opponent's A-Spec, which is huge. I'm trying to think of the best way to play this to maximize my chances of being able to do not anything, but do something. I'm in an awkward spot because I have so many fires prized. If I use vacuum and take a fire off of the prizes, then I can Ultra Ball for Luminion, grab Arven, then go from there. Well, Zard is going to get promoted either way, or the Charmander, I should say. So let's see, there's the Turo. Let's see. If I take a knockout here, I go to 4. And then a vacuum would put me at 3, and then that would be 2. So yeah, the vacuum play is the most important play right now, because it's going to determine what supporters I play and how the rest of my turns go. So we get the fire energy, which is huge. So now technically, let's see. If I grab Arven with Luminion, I still have access to Collapsed. Defiance Band, I don't need that. Okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to Ultra Ball, get rid of the Turo and the Defiance Band. We're going to grab Luminion. Play the Luminion. Use Luminous Sign, grab the Arven. And now we have access to Rare Candy Charizard, but I don't have a boss effect, which is a little bit annoying. I need the boss effect to be able to do anything. I think I have to risk it with a bib. I may have played this turn super incorrectly. We're gonna find out. So, Ultra Ball. Ultra Ball, Iono collapsed. That's fine. So Ultra Ball, get rid of Iono and collapsed. Grab the barrel. Go here. Attach the fire, attach the stone. And there's 3 things I need. I need Rare Candy Charizard and a way to switch my opponent's Guardy to the bench. And that's all of that. Okay, that's actually exactly what I wanted. So we can bench the other Charmander too, which is huge. We can go Star Alchemy. Grab the Charizard. I have to grab Charizard. I can't grab Pidgeot right now, sadly. And then if my opponent takes a knockout, they go to 1. Yeah, that's fine. So we'll go Charizard. Vernal Rain. There's no energy to accelerate, but looking at what's in the deck, we still have 2 rare candies, and we still have 2 super odd. Plus, we have the Prime Catcher too. So, Counter Catcher, bring up the Guardy. So this is gonna force my opponent to find some more resources. Go Burning Darkness. We have the Bib online, which is good. I just need to ensure that next turn I can get the knockout. So, Arven Fire Energy. So the Fire Energy can be useful. But as far as cards in my hand to potentially burn, there's very minimal. My opponent would have to get the EX out, power something up, and then collapse away their EX. Let's see. Heavy Ball, Earthen Vessel, 3 Iono gone, 3 Arven gone. Counter Catcher's gone. So getting rid of the Flutter Mane. There's the Super Rod. Now let's see, my opponent takes a knockout. I have to promote something to retreat. I have to try and draw Super Odd plus rare candy, plus Charizard, plus another way to switch without playing Arven. That's so awkward. There's a Screamtail. Screamtail's annoying, but it's not terrible. Let's see, if my opponent, that's 140, which means my opponent can accelerate 6. So, okay, my opponent can't KO with Screamtail unless they play the boss on Luminion and use Roaring Scream there. The only way that they can take a KO would be if they put a Luxurious Cape on themselves, in which case they'd put so much damage on them that a Charmander would just be able to take the knockout. Just Arven for never mind. Our Defiance Band is gone. I don't need Choice Belt. So, okay, Drifloon. Drifloon does do it. Drifloon can take a knockout on the Charizard, so I'm gonna have to see how my opponent plays out their hand. There's another Curlia. Interesting that my opponent went Screamtail. I mean, I understand it because they're probably going to boss Luminion up, which I get. It leaves the Drifloon available for them to be able to take a knockout. But if they don't hit Guardy EX, their supporter for the turn isn't going to do anything. And if my... Okay. Well, okay, never mind. Now we just win. I forgot we have Prime Catcher in the deck still, so we can just Arven for Prime Catcher, and then Prime Catcher take a knockout on an EX and take 2 prizes, so... A little bit of overthinking, but not horrible. Now if my opponent collapses their hand away, or their board away, we're in trouble, but... There's a Rotom and a Charizard, not going to do much. We still do have to find the Prime Catcher, but... Hopefully, we're able to. We can bench the Rotom to at least get rid of a couple cards. My opponent's going to have to put 100 damage on themselves. Take 2 prizes. And if they hit Collapse, I'm going to be sad, but I don't think that they play Collapse, so I shouldn't have to worry. If they had something like Collapse into Super Rod to evolve this Guardy back, it would be rough, but now we just have to hope and dig for the Prime Catcher and go from there. So there's Charmander, we have the draw for turn, Super Rod. Do I want to burn the Super Rod? Let's see. Let's see, my opponent is down Cape, Charm. Still have access to Charm. My opponent needs 12 damage counters on this, so Charm won't be able to do it. I think I'm gonna... I should have bibbed first. Yeah, I definitely should have bibbed first, because now this shuffles my deck and it doesn't guarantee the Arven. But we're going to just see what we do. So, okay, we get the Arven anyways, which is huge. Now we have access to Prime Catcher. So now we can Prime Catcher up the Guardy EX. So, definitely a small misplay with using the Super Rod, just because even though I had an Arven on the bottom of the deck, I still had... Well, okay, never mind. I only had 2 in the deck, so shuffling it actually was huge. So, couple of small things that I definitely could have done a bit different, but overall it ended up working out. The biggest thing, you know, when you're learning is to just play a deck a lot, learn the sequencing. I don't play a whole lot of Charizard, but when I do, it's a lot of fun and it's super strong, so I understand why it's doing so well. I just think that, personally, there's more fun decks for me to play. Charizard's used to be super linear. Now there's a little bit more thinking involved, but overall, thank you guys for everything. Thank you for all the love and support. It's almost a 1-year anniversary on the channel, and you guys have really been making everything amazing for what I want to do. So if you guys did enjoy today's video, or you did find it helpful, do me a favor, smash the like button, subscribe, turn on post notifications. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think of this video style. It took a long time to edit, so we'll probably do these maybe once a month, but definitely not an everyday thing. But again, thank you for everything, and I'll see you guys in tomorrow's video. Later.